Hey friends, welcome back to the show. It's so good to spend time with you week after week. I appreciate you being a follower of Monday Morning Mojo. I love doing this show because it gives us an opportunity to talk about things that can really shift our mindset and raise that frequency, give us that mojo we need to not only have a good week, a great week, a productive week, but really to help us adopt the mindset and the habits that will allow us to excel at anything we do. And last week, we kicked off a two-part series on abundance versus scarcity and what it actually means to live from a place of abundance and how scarcity really, I think a scarcity mindset quietly runs the show for a lot of people out there without even realizing it. If you missed part one, go back and give it a listen after this because today's episode builds directly on it. And here's a quick recap in case you did miss it. I'm going to, in just a couple of minutes, run through some of the highlights of last week's episode. And as I mentioned, we talked about the difference between abundance and scarcity in terms of the way we think. And scarcity thinking is operating from fear. Fear that there might not be enough, that you have to hold on tight to things, that opportunities might be rare or fragile. It's that little voice that says that with every win, it might be temporary. And it's that voice that has you believing that resources could run out at any time. Where abundance and abundant thinking operates from a completely different place. The belief that resources, opportunities, love, possibility are never fixed and that they can truly expand and that there is endless supply. And the wild part is that the shift doesn't start by thinking in terms of your bank account. In other words, we talked a little last week about abundance not just being based on money or finances, that abundance is really a way of thinking, believing, attracting, and living. And it starts with your mind in the small everyday decisions that you barely notice that you're making around the energy you want to emit, the energy you want to attract, and your beliefs around your opportunity. And so today I want to get into part two, which I promised we would. And I want to give you something practical, not just philosophical. And I want us to dive into this whole concept of abundance because I think we talk about the word and I don't know if we really stop to pull apart what is the meaning behind abundance and what the actual attributes, which are the habits and the mental patterns that abundant thinkers share. So I did some research. I pulled this together after diving deep into that research. I want to give a shout out to Lisa Nichols, who has spent years studying and teaching exactly this. She is someone that I've been following for a long time. You might recognize the name. She's an author, a speaker, a mindset coach. She was featured in The Secret years ago. And so Lisa has dedicated her life to helping all of us live a more abundant life. And so today I want to give you nine attributes of abundant thinkers. So I don't want to just list them and move on. We're going to sit with each one for a sec and really talk about what it actually looks like in real life and what the scarcity version of that same moment tends to look like too. So for a lot of you out there, I'm going to give you some fair warning. Some of these are going to feel like I've been reading your journal. And maybe that's the point. This episode isn't meant to be comfortable. It's meant to be useful. And it is really an opportunity for us to explore some things about ourselves, about our thinking, and about our habits. So it's all good. I want you to know you are held here in a safe space. If you're able to grab your journal or something to write with, that's probably going to be very helpful for you. If you're driving, working out, or whatever, it's fine. Listen, just listen in. You can always play it back later if you want to take some notes. Because I am going to give you a lot of good stuff today. I'm going to walk you through what it looks like in real life, what the scarcity version of some of these abundant moments might look like. And the reason why is so that you can identify it and reframe it. So here's another thing before we dive in. I just want to share why I care about getting this one right for you. I care so much about this conversation because abundance is our birthright. And I would love to see more of you step fully into this abundant thinking. And I believe that abundance, this isn't about mood either. Abundance is not something you feel on a good day or that you lose on a bad one. It's a set of habits, small, repeatable, maybe even boring sometimes because they're so simple. But these habits will compound over time, and it will lead to thinking differently and acting differently. It could quite possibly lead you into having a completely different life. And the other thing I want to say is that nobody is born more abundant than anyone else. We have to work at this. It's a practice. That's why I like to talk about it and teach it. I think it's a practice that we have to embrace, and we can get there each day, little by little, through those daily habits and practices. And again, through a decision. We make a decision, one decision at a time, and those moments do build on each other. And that's what today is about. We're going to name the moments so that you can start practicing abundant thinking on purpose. All right, let's get into it. So we're going to cover the 9 attributes of an abundant thinker. And number 1, they set long-term goals. Abundant thinkers don't just plan day to day or month to month. They think in 3 to 5 years out. And I think that scarcity thinking keeps you in survival mode, thinking about how you're going to get through the day, get through the month, maybe get through this bill cycle or whatever the immediate crisis is in front of you. But abundant thinkers, they zoom out and they are thinking about what needs to get done today and how that lines up with their future goals. They're creating vision. They're creating vision around what they want their life to look like and how they want to grow into the future. So think about the difference between someone who says, I just need to make it through the month, versus someone who says, in 3 years from now, I plan to own my own business. Or someone who says, I just need more hours in a day, versus someone who says, I control my time and make decisions about how I want to invest that time. Now, I never promised that any of this would be easy. It may be simple to understand, but it may not be easy. So as you start to listen to these attributes of abundant thinkers and also what scarcity might look like, then when you realize that there's opportunity here to shift, it's going to take some time to develop this new way of thinking. It's going to take some time for you to unlearn some of the habits around the way you see the world around you. So number 1 was abundant thinkers set long-term goals. Now, here's an opportunity for you to try. If this is the first place that you would like to apply some new ways of thinking and acting, and if you'd like to get out of that survival mode, I want you to, when you're able to, create time to do a future self exercise. In other words, think about where you want to be 12 months from now. Not just some goal setting, but really a vision of where you want to be in your career or your business, where you want to be in your leadership, what you want life to look like, where you want to live, anything that really creates a movie in your mind around where you want to be in 12 months from now. And then ask yourself, what can you start doing right now to move into that vision? So that's a great way for you to adopt this mindset. All right, number 2, the second attribute of abundant thinkers, they make a plan and they're willing to modify it. And I think that's the nuance a lot of people miss. Abundant thinkers are not rigid. They're very much in flow. They are adaptable and flexible. Abundant thinkers are willing to make the plan, but they also know that sometimes we might get off track. They understand that there will need to be times where we take a time out, play red light, green light, and we pause and we assess what's working, what's not working, and make adjustments. So they're always willing to modify the plan. They know that life is going to change and that there are things about life that may be unpredictable. Scarcity thinkers tend to do the opposite. They just make it up as they go, reacting to whatever's in front of them instead of working from a plan at all. So what does this look like in real life? Picture a road trip. One person maps the route before they leave, knows roughly which highways they're taking, where they'll stop for gas, when they expect to arrive, if there might even be road work, construction. If construction or road work pops up and they're not, prepared for it, they look for an alternate route, but they're still working from the original plan. The other person just starts driving and they figure it out mile by mile. They might still get there eventually, but they could waste a lot of time, gas, and energy along the way. And they could also be more likely to get lost or even give up on the trip in the first place. So the scarcity version of that moment doesn't really leave a lot of room for flexibility, even though a lot of times I think scarcity thinking is disguising itself as flexibility. In other words, we say things like, well, I don't want to plan too much. I just want to go with the flow. But there's a difference between flexibility and having no direction at all. There's a difference between going with the flow and being in flow. So a plan isn't a box or a cage to keep you trapped. It is a starting point. And an abundant thinker knows they need that plan, but that they're always willing to revise it. So if you want to try this and put this into action, take a look at some of the goals that you have. I would then ask myself, have I actually broken the goal down into steps? Do I have a rough plan? Even if it's just a couple of bullet points. And if you don't, if you haven't taken the time to really process the goal, break it apart into steps, that would be the first thing I would ask you to do. And for you to make the plan, and then also ask yourself how you could be adaptable, how you could pivot or shift if something was not exactly working out the way you thought. What are some contingencies or options that you could build into your plan? So that might be a way for you to move into a more abundant mindset. Okay, number 3, an abundant thinker does not collect evidence against their own dreams. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that an abundant thinker is always thinking in terms of possibility. They are thinking in terms of their goal being within reach. In other words, they know that they have lots of options, even if those options are not clear at the moment. They refuse to think that whatever vision they have can't be possible, because they truly believe that if they have the dream or the vision, they have the ability to access the means. So an abundant thinker doesn't need 10 reasons why something will work or why it won't work. They know that if they have one good concept, they're going to start running with it. So what does that look like in real life? It looks like this. You have an idea, you start a business, you pitch the project, you ask for the raise, whatever it is, and almost immediately your brain starts building this legal case against it. Oh, the market's too competitive. I don't have the right experience. I don't have a degree. Maybe I don't have enough money. Remember that other project I started? Remember the last time I wanted to build something and it didn't work out? People are going to think I'm crazy, right? We can keep going on and on and on. So by the time you start thinking about and dreaming about the goal, you've already talked yourself out of it. That is what happens when you're in a scarcity mindset. Now, scarcity is going to have you believing that it's just being cautious. Scarcity is going to show up and try to convince you that it's just there to help you and look out for you. But what it's really doing is finding every reason why you might fail. And an abundant thinker is open to possibilities, and they understand that failure is part of the journey of success. An abundant thinker is thinking in terms of sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. And so again, it's not to say that an abundant thinker, it never fails. They just handle it differently. And they are more optimistic about the possibilities and how they can succeed. So if you are connecting with this, I would say in order for you to grow into a more abundant mindset, I want you to take some time to really think about whatever the dream or the goal is. Maybe even write it down. I'm a big fan of putting things on paper, and I often encourage you to journal. So write down whatever it is that you've been quietly holding on to and maybe even building a case against. And as you write, I want you to try to come up with one honest reason why it could actually work. Yeah. I want you to shift your thoughts away from all the reasons why it might not work and allow yourself to ask the question, well, what if it worked out? What if I was wildly successful? And allow those reasons to start to show up and pile up. And could those possibilities outweigh all of the doubt? I believe they can. Now, that could be a great place to start. So where in your life have you been the prosecutor in a case against your own dream? And what's the one reason it could actually work out? All right, let's move on to number 4. Again, these are the attributes of abundant thinkers. And I touched on it already. They give themselves permission to fail. In other words, abundant thinkers are willing to look at failure in a different way than others. They are willing to fail. They don't plan to fail. I don't want you to think that an abundant thinker is just planning to fail, but they understand that that is a possibility. And it's not that they're reckless on purpose. It's not that they're not following through or doing the research or getting the help, but they realize that sometimes a misstep is part of the process and that there will be an opportunity to learn from that. And so they're committed to failing forward. Every time we fail, every failure is really data. It's not the end of the road. It's just information. And I think that an abundant thinker also knows that failure is not a personal statement of their self-worth. Scarcity thinking treats failure as proof that you should have never tried. Abundance thinking treats it as just part of the lesson. So I want you to think about a toddler, for instance, right? When we were toddlers, or any of you have children, we know that when toddlers are learning to walk, they fall down a lot. And nobody in the room thinks, well, I guess walking's not for them. No, of course not. The falling is expected. It's part of the process. That's why we call them toddlers. They're toddling around. They're not quite steady on their feet yet. But it's only through that whole process of trying, of taking a step, then another, maybe falling backwards, sitting on their butt, getting back up again, and continuing to move forward. And then finally, they're not just walking, but they might be running. See, that is a great analogy for how we approach life. And it's a process. And sometimes we're going to stumble. Sometimes we're going to take a few steps forward and maybe more steps backwards until we get it going and until we start to, be steady on our feet and start to run. So I want you to think about it in those terms. So remember, scarcity thinking is really probably your mind's way of trying to protect you from something, but sometimes protection just holds us back. And so in this case, when we think about the fact that we have to give ourselves permission to fail, it's really understanding that through the failing, we're learning. Through the failing and trying, we're developing our skills, we're developing our confidence, we're developing our optimism, our resilience, and that's a great opportunity for you and for me. All right, number 5. Abundant thinkers tend to forgive very quickly. I think we talked about this a little bit last week in that episode as well. They don't hold grudges. They honestly, and maybe, an abundant thinker never really stopped to understand it, but it's honestly a waste of time. And look, this could be the most surprising one on the list for some of you, but I think it makes a lot of sense when you start to sit with it. Anger and resentment take up real estate. Mental, emotional, even physical real estate. And abundant thinkers forgive sooner and faster, not because the other person necessarily deserved it, but because they refuse to let that negative energy occupy prime space in their mind and their heart. Holding a grudge is scarcity thinking. It says there's only room for the pain and not for what could come next. So think of resentment like that tenant who never pays rent. They move in your mind after a conflict, a betrayal, an argument, or a disappointment, and it just sits there rent-free, taking up room where a new idea, a new relationship, a new opportunity or belief could otherwise live. Abundant thinkers aren't better people who just forgive and never get hurt. They're experiencing the same trials in life as anyone else, but they've simply learned that carrying the hurt indefinitely costs them more than releasing it. And it hurts them more, and the other person isn't affected by it. So again, scarcity thinking sometimes has you believing that forgiveness is letting the other person off the hook or letting the other person win. That isn't true. I think that when we understand how toxic anger can be to ourselves, then there's a lot of freedom in forgiveness. There's a lot of freedom in letting it go. And that is really where you start to step into this abundant energy. So if this is resonating with you, I'll give you something to think about. If there is a grudge you're holding on to, big or small, if it's something that you've been sitting with, if there's a person in your life or in your past that you still have certain feelings about, resentment, maybe even something deeper, hatred even, and you recognize that holding on to that has only been hurting you, you don't have to reach out to anyone. You don't have to make a call and say, I forgive you either. You may decide to write them a letter and never mail it, of course, but just putting your feelings on paper and maybe throwing it out, setting it on fire, putting it through the shredder can be very cathartic. But I think it's an opportunity for you to be more aware of how holding on to that negative energy is affecting you. So if you can let that go this week, I think you'll find yourself opening up to a very different energy, and you will definitely feel a whole lot better. So, abundant thinkers forgive quickly. Okay, number 6, they make decisions based on knowledge, not longing. This one's about the difference between deciding from information versus emotion. In other words, abundant thinkers are going to take a minute to do the research. They are going to ask questions and they're going to gather their information and not make a decision based on how they feel only. And they're also probably not going to make a decision in desperation. I can remember being told, don't make decisions when you're in the valley, right? Because whenever you're feeling off or you're feeling sensitive or overwhelmed, that's not the right time to make a decision. So again, scarcity decisions often come from that place of longing, wanting something so bad that you make a decision in haste before you have all the facts, versus an abundant thinker who slows down and decides what's necessary or what the next step is based on what they actually know. And this shows up everywhere. I mean, this shows up in the workplace. It shows up in our personal lives. Sometimes I've certainly been guilty of it. We make these knee-jerk decisions and we accept certain responsibilities or even jobs because we're just desperate for something new or to leave the old one, or, you know, whatever the situation is. Sometimes we make decisions because we want to move away from something rather than towards it. And so that's something to consider. Are you making decisions based on clarity, or are you making decisions based on how you feel? Because scarcity is going to operate in fear. And so if you're fearful of losing something or wanting something so badly, just the whole energy of wanting something is scarcity. And I sometimes catch myself saying things like, I want, and I usually try to correct that because There's this frenetic energy around saying, I want, fill in the blank. Instead, I try to focus on my intentions. And again, this takes a lot of practice, but I think it was worth mentioning to you today, which is why it's on the list. So I think that we have to look at that urgency that we operate from sometimes and be honest with ourselves about it. I am practicing that more and more, where I'm trying to pause and ask myself questions and make decisions from some base of knowledge rather than emotion. Because logic will always make you think, emotions will make you act. So we want to make sure that we're not acting prematurely. Okay, number 7, we're looking at the ways of abundant thinkers, and we're on number 7. Abundant thinkers celebrate the small wins first. In other words, they don't wait for just the big macro win to celebrate. Abundant thinkers are celebrating daily. They're recognizing the small steps, the tiny bits of progress, because that's what keeps their energy and momentum positive. If you're only celebrating the huge milestones, you might wait a long time between celebrations. Abundance is a daily practice, not a finish line. So if you're looking to become more abundant in your thoughts, look for the little ways that you're winning each and every day. Because again, if you're only celebrating when you hit the massive goal, the promotion, the book deal, the paid off debt, whatever, losing 50 pounds, you might go months or years between moments of genuinely feeling good about your progress. You might actually not recognize the progress, because I don't think it has to be all or nothing. Abundant thinkers build those little celebrations in along the way. And I think that it's an opportunity to embrace their progress. And that can be very motivating. So scarcity thinking says small wins don't count, or it's not enough, or that celebrating anything short of the big goal is settling, or worse, maybe even creating some bad luck around it because we're not there yet. That mindset starves you of the energy, the positive energy that you actually need to keep going. So when you celebrate those little wins, it fills your cup. It inspires you. It motivates you. It gets you back to wanting to see more progress. So I want you to try that. If you recognize that this might be something that you need to do differently, I think a great thing for you to be able to build a habit around is to spend time every night, 5 minutes, review your day, and recognize even just one small win from every day. Maybe even say it out loud or share it with a friend or a partner. Make that your nightly habit. Start this week. Every night before bed, review your day. Notice whatever was positive and how you made progress, somehow that you won. And notice what it does to your energy by Sunday. So, what's one small win from this past day that you can recognize every night that will allow you to feel good and to celebrate? That's your goal. That's your goal this week. Okay, we're on to number 8. We're talking about the 9 attributes of abundant thinkers. And number 8, they don't spend dollar time on penny tasks. Now, this came right from Lisa Nichols. This is something she says all the time. And this is really about how abundant thinkers manage their time and their energy. So an abundant thinker knows the difference between high value work and busy work. And they're willing to delegate the penny tasks so they can stay focused on the dollar ones. Another way to look at this, many of you have heard me talk about this on Mojo before, the 80-20 rule. So an abundant thinker is focused on their 20%. They are working through their priorities first, and they understand that those are the things that actually move the needle. A scarcity thinker even subconsciously believes that they have to do everything in order to feel productive. They have to get into all that busy work. They might even believe that they have to do it all themselves. And they might even tell themselves that no one else can do it for them. No one else can do it like them. Maybe they even say things like, I can't afford any help. Where an abundant thinker says, I can't afford not to protect my highest value time. Because it's when you focus on those priorities that things start happening. when you focus on your priorities, things change in your business, they change in your life. And look, here's the reality around this conversation. You don't need a staff of 10 people. It might mean that you need to figure out how to organize your calendar a little differently. Maybe it means you batch projects or errands differently so that you can really handle it in a more efficient way so that it's not fragmenting your whole day. It might mean you have to say no to something, right? It might mean you have to say no to a meeting. It might mean you can't be in your emails every 10 minutes. It means that maybe you don't have to answer every phone call. You have to figure out how to protect time to do those priorities. Because if you could protect and focus 2 hours of your day on your big rocks, what might start to happen over the course of a week, 2 weeks, 30 days? I guarantee you will see results. And so it means that you might have to start paying attention to the way that you handle your own schedule and how you allocate time for the right tasks. And I get it. This is always something that challenges people, a lot of people, because some of us, a lot of you out there are excited about getting things done and checking off the boxes, and you make a to-do list and you've got a lot of things that you got to get done, and so you feel good when you can start checking the boxes off. But at the end of the day, being busy does not equal productive. Being productive is where you are really focused on getting those bigger priorities done, and it's probably fewer tasks, but it leads to greater results. So if you want to put this into action, I would say that depending on where you are, you, number one, would want to take a look at your calendar and how you're prioritizing your time. You might even have to do what I call a mind dump and just get a lot of these thoughts and ideas on paper in front of you so that you can look at it and then prioritize it. But I think it starts with knowing what your goals are and what those activities are that relate to the goals that really truly are the priority, and protecting time for that. So again, as Lisa Nichols says, an abundant thinker doesn't spend dollar time on penny tasks. So what's one thing on your plate this week that you might be able to hand off, batch, or simply stop doing altogether? All right, we're moving into the home stretch, my friends. Number 9 is they do what they love. The last attribute, maybe the simplest one to say, but the hardest to live, is that abundant thinkers build a life around using their gifts because that's how they express who they are. It's also how they achieve more significant success, because when we are using our gifts, we're working in our strength zone, and that is going to make what we do really come to life and allow us to be more creative, more successful, more effective. Now, this is not about generating wealth necessarily. Again, this is not just about making money. Not to say that that's a bad thing. And I think that money and wealth is part of abundance, but it's not the only thing, as we talked about last week. Abundant thinkers are focused on being abundant in terms of their income as well, but they're also looking to be abundant in their thoughts, abundant in their relationships, and they're looking to find joy in what they're doing. So yeah, I would say that. I would say abundant thinkers understand that joy itself is a form of abundance, not just a byproduct of it. Because I think when we do what we love, we really are stepping into the fuller expression of ourselves. And that is not a luxury reserved for just some of us. It is not a luxury to do what you love one day down the road after you have built a career, or after you've paid off all your debt, or when you're ready to retire. It can be today, and you can make some small steps towards it every day. I think abundant thinkers are aware of that, and they weave it into the now, and they weave it in whatever form is available to them, whether it's a hobby, or whether it's how they enjoy their downtime, or how they become more creative at work. They're looking to incorporate their natural gifts, their strengths, their talents into everything they do, and they attract opportunities that align with that. Where in the contrast, scarcity thinking, sometimes it has us believing that joy is something we have to earn. And I want to change that right now if that's something that you can resonate with. It's not a byproduct. It is absolutely available to you right now. And I think when we spend our lives waiting to enjoy something or waiting to be happy or waiting to experience more fulfillment, we're missing out on a lot of abundance that could be right around us. And so I want you to think about how you can incorporate more of that into your life. You don't have to postpone joy or happiness. You will not become more happy because you've achieved something. I believe that when you look for ways to truly be happy or joyful, you will be more successful. So try that. I want you to think about how you, if you need to, reverse the order and start to appreciate, connect, and express your joy, your gratitude, and your happiness. And I want you to see how that will build over a very short period of time into you feeling more successful and attracting more success into your life. All right, so there they are, the 9 attributes of an abundant thinker. I'll run through it again real quick so that you have an opportunity to reflect right now and hold on to what we just talked about. Number 1, they set long-term goals instead of just surviving the moment. Number 2, they make a plan and they're willing to modify it instead of just winging it. Number 3, an abundant thinker refuses to collect evidence against their own dreams. Number 4, they give themselves permission to fail. They know failure is part of success. Number 5, they forgive very quickly. They don't hold grudges and they don't allow resentment to take up rent-free space in their mind. Number 6, they make decisions based on knowledge, not longing or emotion. Number 7, they celebrate the small wins first, not just the big ones, and they don't wait for a finish line that could take a year or more. They celebrate the little wins every day. Number 8, they don't spend dollar time on penny tasks. And 9, they do what they love because joy itself is a form of abundance. So I trust this was really a powerful conversation for you. And I also wouldn't be surprised if someone out there is feeling a little exposed right now. And that's okay. That means something landed. But I don't want you leaving this episode thinking that you have to overhaul all 9 at once, because that would be scarcity coming back again in disguise. Honestly, the fact that we've had this conversation and that you can relate to some things is great, but I think the idea that you have to fix everything immediately is not the goal. So here's what I would suggest. Just pick one. Not all 9, just one. Which attribute is the furthest from how you currently operate? Start there. Sit with that one for a week and notice where scarcity shows up in that specific area, whether it's a conversation with someone else or in your own mind, whether it's a decision you make or avoid, whatever it is. Practice choosing the abundant version instead, even in just the smallest ways. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you're going to do it once, then twice, then it continues to go on from there. And you're going to focus on it for at least a week by really putting your attention to just one day at a time. So you will make that your focus today, and then when tomorrow comes, you'll focus again tomorrow. And if you can do that, if you can just take this 1 week challenge, we're going to call it, let's call it the 1 week abundance challenge. I love that. So we're going to have this 1 week abundance challenge. You can DM me or put a note on our Facebook page. I would love, love, love to hear from you about what your 1 week abundance challenge is. I just thought of that, so I'm excited. I want you to do this, guys. If you want more structure, then pick one. I'll give you another thought too. Maybe you just start with the first one and then you just move through all 9, right? So whatever you want to do, but just start with one. And let's try this. Let's do this 1 week abundant challenge. So it's Monday. For a lot of you, you might be listening on Monday, but it doesn't matter. Whatever day you're listening to this podcast, you're going to focus on the next 7 days, right? Don't get all in the weeds. Just 7 days. This is your challenge to really work on your abundant mindset. And you're going to focus on that one action and you're going to create a habit around it. And I would love to hear from you and share those little wins with you. So feel free to DM me or reach out to me in any way. And let's start to shift out of scarcity thinking into abundance. That's what this is about. That's what Mojo is about, honestly. And again, remember, it is not about being perfect, but it is about being purposeful. It is about making deliberate choices one moment at a time. And then as we repeat them, we build on it, they become habits, and it starts to change how we show up in this world. And that's when you have an opportunity to see different results. So if this episode helped you, know this, you're not alone. Share it with someone else who needs to hear it. And I think they'll appreciate that. So right now, share this episode with someone else. And then remember, tell me on social what it is that you're working on, which attribute you're starting with for your 1 week challenge. I do read every message, and I appreciate when you do reach out to me. So I'll be cheering you on. Thanks again for being with me. I will see you in the next episode.